At Salford City, it's all about the class of 92. But here at Mansfield Town, we've got something a little bit better. Yes, it's the class of JB9. With Jordan Bowery back in his natural habitat, the Stags continued their unbeaten league run, stretching it to 16 games unbeaten this season in the league, 17 if you include the run at the end of last season as well. They're closing in on a club record away from home as well, but focus now turns back to home soil as they welcome an old face, a manager who's not quite had the look of the Irish, and certainly hasn't had the look of Clough. We'll talk all about that tonight on the Mansfield Matters podcast and reflect on the win at Salford as we break another Stags hoodoo. Not only winning at Salford, but winning in a debut of a shirt. More on that to come over the next hour or so. As always, get your comments in and have your say on your team. This is the Mansfield Matters podcast. It's the show for the fans, by the fans, proud to be part of the talkSPORT fan network. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Mansfield Matters podcast. Hope that you're all doing all right and having a fantastic week thus far. So the Stags win at Salford, their first win at Salford in 4 attempts, breaking what was starting to become a little bit of a hoodoo. But after 3 successive defeats in the Cup as well, the most important thing is that the Stags got themselves back on track and back to winning ways. Joining me to talk all about it, let's say hello, good evening to our comrades from around Mansfield, Ashfield, Bolsover and all other places. Let's say hello, good evening to Clive Parkin. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Craig. I'm fine, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Jolly good. Good to see you as always. And the man who has hardly got any spare time these days. It's actually nice to see him outside of the beard and the hat. It's Santa. Alan Wilson.
Good evening, Craig. Good evening, everybody.
Good to see you as always. As always, if you want to have your say on your team, then feel free to get involved in the comments in the live feed and talk about anything Mansfield Town, whether it's Salford, whether it's anything Mansfield Town related or not. Get involved and have your say on your team. And we start with some breaking-ish news from Mansfield Town, and that is, if you want to lie in on Boxing Day, it ain't happening. The Stags game against Grimsby at home on Boxing Day will now kick off at 12:30 p.m. due to police advice. So, Alan, make sure you set your alarm clock a little bit early. In fact, are you going to get any sleep that night? Because obviously, the previous 48 hours, you're going to be all around the world, aren't you?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit busy, but I'll make sure I'll be at the one call for about 10:30 on Boxing Day, no problem.
And Clive, we know how you sometimes you like to miss kick-off times. Of course, referring to the EFL Trophy game a few months or weeks ago now. Make sure you've got plenty of time this time to get it in your diary. 12:30 Boxing Day, not 3 o'clock.
Thousands of home games I've attended over the years. On one occasion, for perfectly justifiable and unavoidable reasons, I was late for a meaningless game. You won't let it lie.
No, won't let Alan's little slip-up of exchange lie either. It's one of those.
No.
Alan is always exchanged. Clive will always be late to the party. But you were, you weren't late to the party on Saturday afternoon, though, were you, Clive? You were there at Salford, grudging it.
Oh, painfully early.
I know, and walking around the dense woodland or whatever. What did you do before the game? Twiddle your thumbs? Did you go and see the highs and delights of...
No, I went straight into the ground and enjoyed the fabulous hospitality facilities that Salford offer away fans. It hasn't got any better, although there was a bulb in the toilet this time. Sorry?
So they are slow progress. They are making progress at last.
Yes, I'm sure that somewhere else hasn't got a bulb because they've put one in there. But no, the ground is what it is. It's it's a hell of a different ground to what it was when they were in the public eye as a non-league side, and you have to give them some credit for that because it went up very quickly. But it is a meagre sort of environment for fans, both sets of fans, if I'm being honest, and they're very poor facilities. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing, there's no shops or pubs or anything nearby. It's just an awful experience from that point of view. But let me tell you this. Oh, and by the way, the sun was in our eyes in the first half. But apart from that, we have, as you mentioned earlier, ticked number 2 of the hoodoo teams off the list.
Of course, we've got a few more of them coming up in the next few weeks or so. But Alan, for me, I wrote down at the very start of my notes tonight that win at Salford could potentially be the most important win of the season so far, especially when you take into consideration the previous 3 games, 3 back-to-back defeats in the separate cup competitions. I know we've spoken about them being cup competitions, but it was so pivotal for the boys, wasn't it, on Saturday to bounce back and get back to winning ways and continue that unbeaten run.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Craig. But I just got a funny feeling that we're going to be okay. I don't know what it was. Salford aren't that. We've never really done well there, have we? And they've always been sort of, nondescript games for us. We've never played exceedingly well, all that sort of stuff. But I just had a funny feeling on Saturday that would be okay. And it turned out to be that way.
Alan, we had to play well on Saturday because they're no mugs. I mean, their defence is the weakest part of their team, I have to say. But we carved them up when we had to do, but we had to be on our mettle because they were dangerous, and Pim had to make a couple of important saves as well. But it was a game that we ground out, and it was good to come away with the points.
Sometimes win games like that, though, Clive, haven't you? You look at the way we conceded the goal. We knew that they'd get crosses in from deep. They did that on a number of occasions. Unfortunately, we weren't punished too often, but that's the times where you've got to rely on the likes of Christy Pym to pull off the saves he did, because if it wasn't for him, undoubtedly it would have been a different sort of result on Saturday afternoon.
It could have easily gone the other way, but I think what we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 games is playing very, very competently, and ignore the cup games, separate issue completely. It's no mistake we've now got 4 consecutive victories against League 2 opposition, and I confidently expect that to be 5 by this time next week. But they are playing better than I've ever seen them play as a unit. That's not to say there's room for a bit more flair in the team. There is, but if you look at the goal that our famous JB9 scored, you won't see many better constructed goals than that. He looked for an opportunity, took it, and finished it with aplomb. Absolutely lovely goal. See, it looks better on TV than it did from where we were stood, actually, because you got a better view of the shot. But I think there's nobody in that ground would have denied that we were worth the 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know Mark in the comments, Alan, has asked about any updates on Aiken's return. Whilst we don't have any to sort of hand at the moment, it's unlike previous seasons, it's not a worry, is it? Because Jordan Bowery has gone straight back up there after playing pretty much almost all of last season in defence, and definitely all of this season at right back when he's had to play there or whatever. He's slotted back up there. Him and Rhys Oates have, like an old pair of socks, so comfortable together. Really, really look good. And you know what? You look at the way we won the game against Salford. Bowery's goal that he scored, instinctive, driving at the defenders, cutting in and getting that lovely curling shot in. And then for Davies Keeler-Dunn's goal, pulls off into a wide position, allows that gap in the middle for Keeler-Dunn to run into, interchange as well with Callum Johnson, who delivers a perfect ball. And you have to say it was quite literally the class of JB9, which has sort of got us through that game. And at the minute, I think when Lucas Akins is back fit, Jordan Bowery's performance up there will not warrant a straight swap, will it? Because him and Oates have clicked again.
It's just nice to see. I think it's now, what's the word I'm after? I think it's also good to see Rhys Oates starting to fire on all cylinders as well, because it's helped Jordan take a bit of pressure off him. With Akins not playing and putting Jordan back up there, we said a fortnight ago, didn't we, both myself and you, that we thought Jordan would play up there. You know, he would put Barry back in the centre forward position, and I think it's worked well because he's played well. He's done reasonably well wherever he's played. He's just one of them players at the moment that, you know, it doesn't matter who gets injured. You can't see him not play out of the team. And if Pim and Flinders were injured, I think he'd have a stab at that as well.
He probably would, wouldn't he? And you know, knowing Jordan Bowery, he'd actually have a man of the match shirt as well. And like Roger says, he's proving to be a good, versatile player. And you know, you look at the way he performs, Clive, and he handles himself. He just switches it on, and that whole link up with Rhys Oates, obviously, he's had almost a complete season away from that partnership, but they just get each other in, and Jordan Bowery understands the roles of others. And me and Alan have been banging on Clive for weeks about DKD playing in the 10, and Jordan Bowery's performance further forward in that Akins role allowed DKD to be back to his more effective player that he is.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Bowery is a player reinvented. He's had a new career started as Mr. Versatility, and it's to the benefit of the football club that we've got him. And certainly he's been adequate cover for the much missed Akins, and I don't believe that Akins would have to wait for Bowery to lose form to get in. I think you'll find another way of playing. But I think the reassuring thing is we have, and we've said this so many times, we have a squad which is able to do the job, and there's enough flexibility in the team there to do it. And it allows for the odd player to have a poor game. It allows us to have to play a different game. I mean, we on Saturday against Salford, we had the minority possession, but that was the game we felt was appropriate. In fact, it was the only game we could have played against them, and then be more incisive than they were when it came to scoring. And I think Bowery has to take some of the credit for that, not all of it, because he's a team player at the end of the day. But it's nice that he had the confidence to take it on and say, I'm going to take this goal. Because I've seen so many occasions when players in that position have not had the confidence to take the shot, and they've played it off to another player. And that's been one of the few criticisms I've had of our team in recent weeks, is they still like to walk it into the goal rather than have a punt.
Yeah, and I think... go on, Al.
I think I was just going to carry on from what Clive was saying. I think that refers to my last point. It's nice to have Oates back, because I think it gives Barry the extra confidence, because they've worked together before. They've both said they like playing together well. So, I think it helps Jordan as much as it helps Rhys as well. Takes that little bit of pressure off him.
Yeah. I mean, we could have had a third goal if Maris had just a little bit more luck.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate that way.
It looked stupid, but it wasn't. It was just bad luck on the day, and it earned the opportunity to score, and he didn't take it because the ball pinged off his foot. But those things are going to happen. We're making the opportunity. That's the first thing you've got to say. We're creating opportunities.
And that's what a good team's got to do. You know, when you look at the possession stats and you think, well, they had a lot of possession. A lot of it was in their half, and we did make it difficult for them to come forward. I don't think we gave them too much in terms of chances. Goal was avoidable. I'll come on to that in a little minute. But the way we sort of kept our composure, ground them down, I actually felt in the second half they didn't have much of a sniff, and we were pretty much in control. We probably should have scored another goal, but like people have been saying, Alan, Rhys Oates being back fit, a good Rhys Oates, like Mark says, will be unplayable with his pace and directness. Now, I'll add a caveat to the end of that as well, and I think a lot of that is down to the fact that we've actually gone back to the way we were playing almost when we got to the playoff final that year, with that a little bit more directness, played it on the floor, and it plays more to Rhys Oates' strength, unlike last year when we were playing the back five and, he was almost on his own. We link up, a good link-up play allows the best of Rhys Oates, and we've got the players to complement it now.
And it's no coincidence, is it, that he's come back when he has come back. I know he had to come back a little bit sooner, with Boateng being ill that time, or injured, whatever it was. I think he was ill. And so they shoved Rhys in straight from the start. But, I mean, he's not looked out of place at all, has he? His pace is reasonable. Is not firing on fully all cylinders yet, but I mean that will come. it's only a matter of time, while he gets a few more games under his belt. But it's just coming nicely with Aikens being off, to add that gap with Barry up front, and it's just it's working well.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats for the last 4 games, it's very impressive. It's championship winning side material, because what we have is in the last 4 games we've scored 12 goals, and if you extrapolate that across the season, we will end up being the top scorers in the division. We're second top as it stands, and that's taking into account we were a bit slow scoring in the early games. In fact, that brings us back onto the thorny subject of draws. But I think with our current form is only bettered by Stockport, and sooner or later they're going to stumble. We're one of the few teams to have beat them. So I'm a lot more confident than I was 3 or 4 weeks ago. The Notts County game was fabulous, but I'm thinking, are we going to be able to replicate that? And we have been doing. We've been playing as well against teams where we've struggled in the past as we did against Notts County.
I can't even say that I fear a slump in form too much, to be honest, Alan. I mean, we've obviously had that little spell where we lost the 3 games in the Cup, which are almost irrelevant. And there will come a point where we will lose a league game. But I can say, at the minute, the way that the boys have responded to that cluster of games and those defeats, and the way that they grind results when, they're not looking in front of goal, they're not enjoying as much possession, not able to play it, I think that speaks for itself. And I don't think that any blip would be a massive blotch on the copy paper. I think it'd end up being one of those unique stains which ends up turning quite arty in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. As much as I like
an arty blot,
as much as I like a good cup run, and obviously it brings the money in, the coffers can always be utilised nicely for Mr. Radford. But I think it's a blessing in disguise, that we've lost the cup matches. We can concentrate solely. I know we've got Burton and that cup still to do, Bristol Street Motors Cup. But we can just concentrate solely on the league, which we haven't been able to do for a while, have we? And with the squad that we've got, you look at the bench, it's always strong, irrespective who's on there and who's actually got the shirt on the day. It just bodes well, and everything's, it's looking good.
Yeah, and you've got a few.
Sorry, I was going to say the other thing is we've had a week to recover as well, which is nice to have, because we've had that period where we've been playing twice a week for quite a while. And so the delayed Burton game came as a bit of a gift, I thought.
I agree.
And of course, it slips back in next week, but then we've got to rest when the second round of the FA Cup fixtures are there. So I think it's all playing quite nicely into this players coming back to availability cycle that we're in.
Yeah.
And to go back to Oates, I mean, the absolute blessing that he's back. He's about 75% as good as he can be, but that's to be expected. He can only get better provided he stays injury free.
Yeah, that's very true. And on the injury front as well, I know a few people have sort of mentioned him in the comments. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but should have Stephen Quinn back in that Burton game, as well as John Joe O'Toole. So it'll only boost the availability in the competition, which is absolutely fantastic for this time of the season, in vast comparison to previous years where it's almost the November curse. I can never remember a good November, but at the minute we're sort of ticking over really nicely. We're getting to where we're getting, and even when we are conceding soft goals and silly goals, the one against Salford was definitely avoidable just by doing something simple as pressing. We knew they were going to get a cross in from deep. Just go and press it early. They don't get the cross in, and therefore the lad doesn't get the header in. I know there was a little mention on commentary about why wasn't Aidan Flint picking him up. Read the game. It was because he was on the opposite side. He wasn't man-for-man marking. Matt Smith was playing the front line, and at that point...
And he was also exhausted. He'd just done a long foray up the right wing.
Exactly.
He got all excited, and Giddy was up there. And you got to get back.
The most important thing is, we saw it out. We didn't crumble. We saw it out. We dug our feet in, and we got the result. And, sometimes we will have poor games and we'll perform poorly. I know we were talking about it a few weeks ago with the midfield, and sometimes we'll have good games, but as long as we get results, no matter how we perform, that is the most important thing. Roger says, a lot tougher on the squad if cup games got in the way. Injuries should now be minimalised with less matches to play. And of course, the blessing in disguise there as well is, people will say, well, the cup games give opportunity for players to keep match fit. We've got the Central League fixtures to do that, Alan, as well. You can always friendlies. There's so many ways to keep players ticking over now in competitive environments. And, it is what it is. And even if we do manage to get through in the Papa John's, Bristol Street Motors, Milk Cup, whatever it's called tomorrow, trophy, the games aren't going to be coming as thick and fast because they're now stages. So actually progressing in that actually might be a good thing at this stage of the season.
I'd like to see at Burton a team consisting of Flinders, O'Toole, Quinn, and the rest kids.
Well, they've got
even kids who play football,
haven't they?
Yeah.
They have to play so many that's played in the week before. Is it 5?
It's more than that, I think.
How is it? I know they have to play so many, but I mean, I get your point. They can, start and put other people at the back, that haven't been playing so regular.
Absolutely right. We'll talk Burton later on. Let's go back to Salford for just a minute because there was another hoodoo broken, Clive, and that is the fact that we debuted a new shirt, and usually when we debut a new shirt, it doesn't go quite as well, especially at Salford.
Yeah, we've done it before at Salford. We introduced the sky blue one at Salford for no justifiable reason. I don't think that was the reason we didn't win. We played awful, but I don't dislike the garment per se. I think it's an attractive shirt. I don't think it's necessary. I'm an old fart when it comes to kit. I think unless there's a colour clash, you should stick to your first team shirt. Having said that, I'm pretty sure there must have been some promise to the sponsors that the shirt should come out at some point.
I'm going to say, I think it's been mentioned, so many, possibly Bradford City, possibly there's a couple of 3 games where that one will be worn. But I thought it looked quite smart.
I would rather that be the away shirt than the red one.
100%.
The red one's got no place in our squad whatsoever.
Hey, listen, when we played away in red, we've done all right. So I'm calm about
bad in it, have we? When we played, so
off. We're yellow / amber and blue. That's it. We are not red. That's Forest, and no, we don't need that. Moving on.
I think we get your point, Craig.
Good. I'm glad you do. Got to add a little.
He don't like the red, does he?
Just to sneak.
I'm getting the impression.
Me neither.
Oh dear! If only we had our shirts guru on the show tonight to talk us all through the stats and statistics. He'll be back soon, and of course you can follow his page where he's doing some lovely stuff with shirt graphics now as well. Anyway, let's move swiftly on. Before we take a quick break, there is one more item on the agenda from the Salford game, Alan, and that is the fact that we will be forced into a change on Saturday against Newport because Callum McDonald is suspended.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you don't seem to be worried about it anymore, do we? Bailey's, Cargill is perfect replacement for that, however it happens, whether he's got yellow cards, whatever he's done. And, it'll be the same when he plays on Saturday. If he plays well, which we assume he will do, it'll be up to Mr. McDonald to force his way back in again. That's the way it's going at the moment.
Yeah, and if anyone thinks, well, what about Stephen McLaughlin? He's out injured for about 2-3 weeks again. Yeah, he won't be back in.
I don't want to sound like the pessimist here, because it's your job, Craig, but I sincerely doubt whether McLaughlin's ever going to play like he did when he was in his pump. I think he's been bashed too many times. And apart from that, the clock's ticking, isn't it? Same with Quinn. We have to accept that we're not going to see Quinn next season as a player, I don't think. And therefore, it's right that we should be blooding new players. We can't just get to a cliff edge and realise that we've lost players and we've not replaced them. The whole thing about the business is a plan of continuity. And we have got just about every position covered, which is completely different to what it was last season.
Well, again, we'll touch upon it later, but I'm looking at a potential 11 for the Burton game. And again, it's so much cover in so many positions. You could do 3 or 4 variations on it. It's absolutely great. Right.
Yeah.
Take a quick break. As always, keep your comments coming in and have your say on your team. However, we need to, at this point in the show, make you aware that in the next part of the show, we are going to be digging over some old ground. So trigger warning, we are going to take you to a dark place indeed. Yes, we're going to be talking about the Graham Coughlan era, and I mean era. Welcome back to the show for the fans, by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters Podcast. Great to have you with us. Series 7, Episode 17. We've been going a very long time. We've seen some highs and we've seen some lows. None more so than cast your mind back. I know it's a horrible time period to do it, but cast your mind back to October 2020. We were all stuck indoors. We could only go out for 10 minutes a day in the nearest park. You could go one way around Tesco and you had to wear a face mask. Hands, face, space and all that absolute. And of course, we weren't allowed into football stadia, which was probably a good thing for me and Clive at the time, because we would have been watching Graham Coughlan absolutely Mansfield Town up. Alan Wilson had the horrible pleasure of watching the home games because announcers, for some strange reason, were still allowed in stadiums, announcing to absolutely no one. But it was baffling and still amusing when you look back on it. But it was by far probably the worst period in Mansfield Town history, in recent history, Alan. And on Saturday, him and Joe Dunn return to One Call Stadium. Now, as people, they were lovely people, that it has to be said. But as a management team, they were absolutely atrocious.
It just didn't work, did it? It didn't work at all. And I'll just harp on what you said about me being able to go into the games. I'll tell you a little bit of a funny story, if I may. The substitutes used to sit right below my box. And I got to know Jordan Bowery, you know, because he was mainly a sub then, got quite a few. And then there was a gentleman just sat to the left of my box. And I thought, you know, he's got all the kit on. Obviously, he was injured, you know, we were all covered up and whatever, because it was quite cold that day. And I was just looking round, and then he went in at half time and got a cup of tea off Laura, who used to work Coops' missus, who used to work at Stags. And he came back out, and Laura gave him a right dressing down because he'd pinched this cup of tea and he shouldn't have done. And I said to a friend Kieran, who puts the music on for me, I says, Kieran, who is that? And he went, none other than Ollie Clark. I didn't even know it was Ollie Clark. I didn't.
Oh.
Ollie Clark is the gift. Ollie Clark is one of the few gifts we've a legacy from the Coughlan period, isn't it?
Hmm.
And Mr. Bowery.
Yeah. As I say, I got to know Jordan quite well. We had quite a few chats.
I mean, I know we're in the second.
The goalkeeper. What was his name?
Marek Steck.
Yeah. That bloke was quality.
Then. No, I think Marek Steck played. Under Coughlan, Marek Steck played, and then under Clough, it was more Aidan Stone until,
Yeah. But it was very good on the subs bench, you know, geeing everybody up, and it was quality, that bloke.
It was great at supporting the rest of the lads, no question about it. I know we're in the second half of the programme, Craig, but given that we're talking about Mr. Coughlan, perhaps it ought to have left it a bit later, so we could have been in the final third.
That's worse than that's a worse joke than some of my analogies, and some of them are. But no, it was an unforgiving time to be a Stags fan, and I remember sort of at the time of his appointment, you know, we didn't feel it was the right appointment at the time. Obviously, he took the job. He was manager of Bristol Rovers at the time. Took the job to move closer to his Sheffield home, which, you know, is understandable. But it wasn't quite the right reasonings behind the appointment. But I do feel in some ways, Clive, sorry for Graham Coughlan, because he did have the terrible record. Obviously, 4 wins from 24 games in charge of the Stags, 24 competitive games, that is. And it came at a time where he inherited a squad which the previous season, you know, we finished in the playoffs, but had change manager to a manager who didn't really want the job, and they didn't really respect him. We've heard that from numerous players over the years. And then he had the job of obviously doing a massive turnover of players and trying to reshape the squad. In the midst of that, a global pandemic where you couldn't get on the training field, you couldn't put training regimes together, you had no idea if football was going to resume or not. Having to balance all of that and then getting back into football as well and under new measures, it must have been a terrible, terrible time to be the manager of a football club in those circumstances. The teams that did well in that sort of era were the teams that managed to stay together and had that little bit of longevity. For any manager trying to change a club and install a new ethos at that time, Clive, it was a job which was really just to collect a paycheck, because you couldn't get any positive result out of it, surely.
No, the circumstances leading up to his dismissal because of poor performance were not of his make. I think it also didn't help us progressively. He seemed to lose the dressing room as well. But I felt a bit sorry for him, although I was glad to see the back of him when he went, because we needed a change, badly needed a change. But he came on, good recommendation. He'd done very well at Bristol Rovers, albeit for a fairly short period of time. And I understand we had to work very hard to get his signature. But these things are going to happen, aren't they? I mean, different circumstances, different way. Clough could have been in and out in 6 months. You just don't know. And I don't wish him any harm except on Saturday.
Yeah. And that's a fair point, Alan, as well, isn't it? It's one of those things that football is a funny old game, and I think any manager in that position would have found it really, really difficult. But it has to be said that with the other things taken into consideration that as well, I don't know if people will remember, it's the fact that the EFL put certain sanctions, didn't they, on dressing rooms at the time, and you could only have X amount of players. And as I understand, in the Coughlin period in COVID, when behind closed doors, he used the dressing rooms, and therefore it was split across 2 dressing rooms, which therefore formed cliques, and it's hard to deliver your team talks to 2 dressing rooms and all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas away teams, this is why people had better away teams, they would, because they couldn't use the dressing rooms, would use like club lounges and club bars. And when Richard Cooper took over as caretaker, I think you'll remember this, Alan, they switched, didn't they? And he ended up using the Kevin Bird suite as a change.
Yeah, and I say all the players got changed in the Kevin Bird suite, and they came running out. Well, they came down the steps when they came onto the field from the old community place. That they did, yeah. So I can remember that. But one thing I'll say about Coughlin, sometimes very occasionally you listen to him, and he does manage to talk sense occasionally. Because the other week he was on the whatever radio it was on, and he'd said that Newport had 3 losses and they'd played really poorly. And he says he got all the players together. He says, I've banked your lot to the hilt. He says, I won't have anybody calling my players. I look after you. Now it's your turn to help me out. You've lost 3 games. You've played really poorly. I've stuck by you. Let's see some return on it. And the next game, they won 3-0.
Yeah.
So, he can do it, if he needs to and when he needs to. But let's just hope it's not Saturday.
It will get a poor reception, though, won't he? Let's not.
I would have thought so.
I don't think it'll be anything like the Danny Johnson.
No, or
no. It'll be a slight level of derision, I guess. But no, I don't think many people who've got full set of thinking tackle will begrudge him too much, apart from any more than no points on Saturday.
In a way, I think he was saved in a way by the Radfords and David Sharp at the time as well, by pulling the trigger when they had to. It was the worst start to a season we've ever had. 9 games without a win. We just couldn't buy a win. We didn't look like a team performer. We didn't look like we were going to get anywhere either. And the Radfords and David Sharp at the time recognised that and knew that something had to change, and it would have been a really difficult decision. I think he would have probably accepted that as well. And actually, is in terms of managerial sackings and managerial change over the Stags' recent history, that's probably one of the most amicable ones, in terms of we're in a really crap situation in terms of a business and in the world, but we have to still act and do what we want to do. And to be fair to him, he's gone on and had a couple of decent jobs since then. He went to Sheffield United's academy for a little bit and did well, bringing some players through. Obviously at Newport now as well, and seems to be doing all right with limited resources there as well. So we wish him well, apart from Saturday. But if you look at how the club's progressed, you've got to actually give him a little bit of credit and say that some of the players that he brought in have actually stayed with the club and have progressed and blossomed. You look at Jordan Bowery, prime example. Ollie Clark on his day, when he gets where he wants to be. Stephen McLaughlin, another one late on in the Coughlin era was brought in. He did bring some decent players in who we've managed to shape and mould into the Clough mould, Alan.
It did, but sometimes it's like Clive said earlier on. It don't always work, does it? For whatever reason. I mean, there was a lot of things that you've mentioned that was against him from the start, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. Other people walk in, they can go on a winning run, and everything's hunky dory. But it was one of those occasions where I don't think he personally helped himself too much either, because of the way he went about things. But it's just one of those things, I think, really. Good luck to him in Newport, but we've got the man that we want now, and we're quite happy with who we've got.
I mean, he's got a real battle this season to avoid relegation, I think, because there's going to be 3 teams disappear, and it's going to be an interesting season, top and bottom this year.
Certainly will be. We'll come on to podcast predictions a little bit later on. Let's move on to some sort of off the pitch discussions. And that, Alan, is the fact that you're going to be a little bit of a busy man at half time, aren't you?
Yeah, hopefully. And I say, I've looked at the long range weather forecast, and I think we should be all right for the Saturday afternoon. And it could be quite interesting, especially with Cam doing it, one of the entrants, if he's telling the truth
if he
about
turns
what
up.
he's doing.
Yeah, if he turns up, yeah. Also, if people don't know, if people haven't heard about it, Alan, do you want to shed a little bit of light into what's actually going to be happening?
Yeah, well, basically, we're sponsored by Food Hub, and I'll go on to the later one in a minute. Between 12:30 and 2:30, up on the top pitch of the training pitch at the back of the Sandy Pay Sports Bar, or Sandy's as it is now, Sandy's Kitchen, there's going to be a massive dartboard, a big inflatable dartboard, and you've got 3 balls to kick onto this dartboard, all for whoever can get the highest score. And I think for that one, I think it's 2 tickets for the 1861 suite, a match of your choice, in the hospitality suite. And then on half time for Food Hub again, I presume it'll be in front of the Quarry Lane, in front of our fans, I would have thought. They're going to put a big tarpaulin over the goals, and it'll have like holes in, at the bottom and at the top, and it's like the old Sky Sports top bin effort. You've got, I think it's 3 people have got 5 efforts, and if you get your football through the hole, I think it's a £25 gift card or whatever from Food Hub. So it should be interesting. It'd be entertaining.
Did you manage to see the players practicing the dartboard up at the
Yes, I did.
And the players got, it's the board, and when the ball hits it, it sticks to it. It's like Velcro.
Yeah.
And they were all scoring various scores, and the highest was about 80 odd, and
87.
And the lowest was Maris with 2.
Yeah, with 4.
Was it 4?
Yeah, he got 2 1s and a 2.
No, I thought he got 2 1s and a third missed the target. I thought, anyway, maybe right, but
no, he got 4.
No one.
Yeah, Callum Johnson, 87. He's top dog at the moment. But I don't think you said that it was said through the media that you can take on the whoever wins the highest. But I think it's whoever wins on the day. Yeah. The highest. Because I won't mind to go at that one.
Get yourself up there, Alan.
I will.
But they had something similar 2 seasons ago in the fan zone, didn't they? Outside the entrances to the Greaves Upper. Similar thing. I don't think it's quite as good as the one I've seen on videos today, but it was good fun. I had to go at it, and there's an element of skill, an awful lot of luck involved.
Yeah, if you had to treble, 17, 18, it's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. You got to get some loft on it. You got to, really try and get it as high as you can, and get on the doubles early if you can. And of course, the penalty shootout style one, the top binge challenge or whatever it's being called. Our Cam is apparently doing it now. He's not on the podcast tonight to defend himself. I don't know where he is.
He's probably training.
Probably. But to every Mansfield Town fan and Newport fan, if you're watching or listening to this, that are listening, when he comes on the pitch to do it, boo him until you're blue in the face. I want to see him slip on his backside. I want to see him. I want to see him miss the target because I want to ridicule him. Because knowing that poxy, he'll probably get top bins first time, and that will annoy me until I die. So boo him, put him off, shout Cam Felton is a whatever you want to shout at him. Just put him off and ridicule him. You're going to boo him, aren't you, Clive?
I'll make a decision on the day.
Hashtag boo Cam. That's all I'm going to say. Talking of other off the pitch things as well, Alan. You're a busy man at the minute. You have been involved with a few things, and you. Roger says I thought Cam was your mate. Whatever gave you that impression? Alan, you were involved in something with Mansfield Museum, which we as a podcast are going to be involved in.
Yes.
Next year. I think it's towards the back end of the season, isn't it? When the exhibition's going to be on. Nick's going to be.
It's March next year that it opens.
We're going to move our podcast studio to there for a couple of episodes and do stuff there as well. But you were filming something for them the other day. Do you want to fill us in on what you were doing and what?
It were very enlightening, to be fair. It went down at 6:00 on Tuesday night because when they do them at when they did them at the One Course Stadium, obviously I'm at work, so I couldn't get down. So I made. They said that they'd sent some emails out. Anybody that was interested in the evening, and I did. I went down at 6:00, and it was a nice little setup. They'd got a nice plush chair for you to sit at. The gentleman was filming all the time, and then it was Kirsty that was asking the questions. And she did actually say that she'd seen and heard the podcast.
Absolutely.
No, she didn't. She was very complimentary about it. That she was.
Well, there you go. And if people want to get involved with it, it's basically all about football history. So this is what the museum post says. Are you a parent, coach or player involved in grassroots football? Are you part of the women's game, or are you just passionate about the game and have memories and stories to share? If so, we'd love to talk to you at one of our oral history sessions. The idea behind collecting oral history is to get people talking about their memories and lived experiences. And with that in mind, we don't set many questions, but use open questions to instigate conversations. If you've got a story to tell us, then join us at one of our recording sessions. Now, there's only one recording session left, and that is on Saturday, the 18th of November, of course, match day, at 10 a.m. till 12 noon at the Palace Theatres Lounge. So before you get to go to one call, nip over to the Palace Theatre Lounge and get involved with that. To book your slot, you can call 01623 463 080. That's 01623 463 080. Or you can email Kirsty. That's ksanders@mansfield.gov.uk. Do get involved with that. I've had a little bit of a sneak preview of what that exhibition is going to be like, and it's going to be really, really enjoyable next year when it's on, and we can't wait to be a part of that. So really, really looking forward to that one. Right, let's turn our attentions back to On Pitch Matters. Podcast predictions coming up in just a moment. But of course, after the Newport game on Saturday, it's the rearranged trip to Burton. Nigel Clough going back to his old stomping ground, Clive. And if memory serves me correct, the last time Nigel Clough was involved in a Mansfield Town versus Burton Albion EFL Trophy Papa John's Car Cup game, he was manager of Burton, and Mansfield beat them with a superb performance between the sticks from Bobby Elashnik at Burton's ground. Obviously, he's going to be the away dugout this time around. And I know you're not a massive fan of the cup competition, but again, ideal time with that Saturday off the following week to get some more people back in. You look at the lineup, you look at the amount of people that will possibly come back in, and it will be a welcome return, hopefully, touch wood, for Stephen Quinn and maybe even Mr. O'Toole.
Yeah, it has that value, no question about it. At a time when these players perhaps haven't played competitively enough, it gives him the opportunity to put these players out there and give them the chance to show what they can do. And with enough players to rotate, all the subs were allowed on the day. So I think it'll be a useful training / competitive game. And I think it means a bit more to Mr. Clough because of his background at that club.
And of course, there is something to play for, Alan, because the Stags can still progress to the knockout stages of the competition. They have to either win outright or win on penalties after a draw. That would take them through. If they lose on penalties, then they wouldn't get through. Would finish above them. So they have to win, be it outright or via a penalty shootout. And for me, I say it year upon year, we should be progressing in this competition. Nigel Clough won't care about it. Neither will 99.9% of people. But I think it's also important to keep momentum going as well. And if you look at the amount of players that will need game time, I basically drafted an 11 here. The only position I can't fill at the minute in terms of won't play on Saturday against Newport is right back. So I've got Flinders, possibly Bowery at right back, then George Williams, George Cooper, Callum McDonald, who will play because he's suspended on Saturday against Newport. If John Joe O'Toole and Stephen Quinn are back, they will be in midfield, presumably with Hiram Boateng, Makeel Abdullah, Will Swan and James Gale up front. That's on paper is a strong side anyway, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And also the money element as well, because isn't it 10,000 for a win?
Outright.
And 5,000 if you go through on penalties.
Yeah.
Well, it just can't be sniffed, can it? If they get through that, and then who knows, you might get a home tie, against a lesser club in the next round, and who knows? It just keeps adding the money, and it adds people, same as you say, getting game time that's not getting game time, as well as the Central Midlands League and any other games that Nigel wants to put on, like on the following Saturday when we're out the FA Cup. He might get beyond the closed doors there with all his contacts. So, do the best you can.
Yeah, I think if we did get through, we would be away from home in the next round because we'd finish second. I think if you home, if you finish second, you're away from home. So we would be away, but it'd still be regionalised as well. I believe. Not quite sure. It changes every year, but I think there's a possibility there to get a behind closed doors friendly on the Saturday. Or he might say, "Do you know what, lads? Away you go. Go and spend the weekend."
Yeah,
with them. Whatever.
Because he likes doing that, don't he? He likes, the odd day with family time because it's important to have family time.
And there's also stories of him when he's been at Burton or Sheffield United or Derby when they've been in the Champ, that when it's the international break and there's a free Saturday, he's sent all the lads off on a jolly abroad and sent Garner with them with the credit card, and they've all had a bit of a bonding experience. So plenty of anyway. Right, let's turn our attention, shall we, to the guessing game that brings you absolutely zero fame. So will they win, lose or draw? And what will be the score? It's the guessing game that brings you zero fame, but to be the best you must outguess the rest. So will they win, lose or draw? And what will be the score? In the League or Cup, you just make it up, because they're just works of fictions. It's podcast predictions. Will they win, lose or draw? So we don't have an update on the table in this episode for you. We're going to keep you guessing on that one. However, we have got 2 games to get your predictions in for. We're going to start with Newport at home, and I'm going to start with Alan Wilson.
Right, Mansfield Town 3, Newport 0, a Mansfield Town win, and I'm going for results again.
Clive.
Alan's stolen my score, but I'm sticking to it. 3-0. Davis Keeler-Dunn.
I am going to go for a 6-1 win.
Oh, I hope you're right.
Rhys Oates is going to be man of the match. Congratulations, by the way, to him and his partner on the birth of their baby. And that's why Rhys Oates will be man of the match, because he'll score a hat-trick, because he won't have been able to sleep, so he'll be playing on insomnia, and he'll score a hat-trick and be man of the match. Let's go with Burton then. I am going to go for a reminder, by the way, that we're looking in the Burton game for the result over 90 minutes. Penalty shootouts do not count. With that, I'm going to kick us off with a 2-2 draw, and the man of the match in that one will be... I'm going to stick my neck out and say he's going to be back. Stephen Quinn will get man of the match in that one. I think we'll edge through on penalties, but it doesn't matter anyway in terms of podcast predictions. Clive?
1-0 defeat, Flinders.
Alan finishes off.
2-1, Stags win, George Williams.
Excellent choice. If you want to play along with podcast predictions, you can do so via the link in the description. A reminder that you must do so no later than 1 hour and 1 minute prior to kick-off in the respective games. And we'll bring you an update in the podcast prediction standings on the show next week. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with when that's going to be, make sure you follow us on all things social media. But play along with the guessing game that brings you 0 fame as the Stags take on Newport in Sky Bet League 2 and then Burton Albion in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy. Right, that is all we've got time for on tonight's episode of the Mansfield Matters Podcast. My thanks, as ever, to the Mansfield Matters Podcast panel, which tonight consisted of the legendary Mr. Alan Wilson and the equally legendary Mr. Clive Parkin. My thanks, as always, to you guys at home for watching and for listening. We'll be back with you again next week as we reflect on all things Newport County, the return of Graham Coughlin, and the return of Nigel Clough to Burton Albion in the EFL Trophy. Make sure you follow us on social media to find out when we're going to be live. And of course, if you want to get involved with podcast predictions, the link that you need is in the description, and you must do so 1 hour and 1 minute no later than prior to kick off in those respective games. If you're going to the Newport game on Saturday, pop into the Mansfield Palace Theatre Lounge prior to 12 noon to get involved in the museum's football project. And of course, at half-time, when Cam's on the pitch, what must you do? Boo. Boo to your heart's content and let him know that he's loved by all at Mansfield Matters. And don't forget to watch ITVB at 9 o'clock tonight if you want a little nosy around Carolyn and John's house. That's all I've got time for. Good night.